And for more on this, Matthew Continetti is editor-in-chief of the Washington Free Beacon. Nice to see you today. Let's start with these key commanders that were taken out by airstrikes. What do you make of this?
About 10 mid-level officials, some of whom were involved, it seems, in coordinating attacks outside of Syria and Iraq, maybe even involved in the Paris attack. I think it's an important victory in the war on terror, obviously, in the war on ISIS, but we have to remember that if these targeted strikes were the only solution to the problem, then we wouldn't have al-Qaeda, we wouldn't have ISIS right now, because after all, we took out Osama bin Laden in 2011, and we've had drone strikes in Yemen for years now. They haven't been enough to actually solve the problem.
Well, one person who says that the White House really doesn't have much to brag about is former Representative Allen West. Let's hear what he had to say on the record.
Just because you score a touchdown, if you're down 49-0, you still are 42 points behind. And I think that's the way that we need to look at this. And furthermore, we may have killed 10 mid-level ISIS leaders, but what about the 5 senior Taliban leaders that were released from Guantanamo Bay?
And Matthew, is that a fair comparison? The Guantanamo Bay people being released, the detainees being released, to the ISIS commanders being killed?
Well, since many of those Gitmo inmates who are released have a recidivism rate at about like a third, it is dangerous policy, I think, to let them back out on the battlefield. But I would say this, I mean, the more important victories that we've had are what Kevin was talking about with Ramadi, and then also another victory in Syria with this hydroelectric dam that some of the Syrian rebels were able to recapture from ISIS. You have to deny the terrorists safe haven, and that means that you have to deny them space on the ground, territory from which they operate. And so in that sense, killing the mid-level officials is a tactical victory, but the more strategic victory is gaining ground and, I hope, holding ground in Ramadi and then beyond Ramadi into Mosul.
Right, and of course Mosul will be a much greater challenge than Ramadi for a number of reasons. But I want to talk about this. I'm a former intelligence operator, and I know that intelligence is very difficult in Syria right now, human intelligence. But when we see targeted killings from airstrikes, that says something about the level of intelligence that we have. When we are not sending people in on raids, we're actually able to be so sure that we're targeting from the air. Does that mean something to you?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right to point that out. It means that there are probably special operators inside Syria right now. And I think it may also mean that we have human intelligence operating in Raqqa, the capital of the Islamic State. So, again, these intelligence coups, is what they are, they're helpful in taking down these organizations. But you're not going to solve the ISIS problem until ISIS no longer controls ground. And so what that means is you have a ground force in Iraq, and you have a ground force in the north of Syria. We really have to figure out who's going to be the ground force that takes over Raqqa, the capital of ISIS in Syria.
And that is a very good question, as we have been seeing ISIS losing ground, of course, also using the internet as a force multiplier. Matthew Continetti, nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.